Hello everybody. So today I will be showing you how to make this puff stitch border for this beautiful scarf. Last time we left off here. And this here is where we will be adding on our border. The pattern for the border here. Let's see, so we have here in light gray the last row of double crochets, which in our case are back post double crochets, but this is where we will be adding on the border. So the first row for the border here in black starts off with a chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, chain 6, skip the first stitch, double crochet in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches, chain 2, skip 2 double crochets, puff stitch in the third, chain 2, skip 2 double crochets, 7 double crochets in the next 7. So that's the pattern. Let's do this. Start off with a chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Turn the work around. It said to skip the first stitch, and then put 7 double crochets. So here we are skipping this first stitch, and we're going into the next one with a double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then the pattern says chain 2, skip 2, puff stitch, chain 2, skip 2, 7. So chain 2, so we're going to skip 2, and we're going to make a puff stitch in the third. For a puff stitch we will yarn over, skip these two, go in here, go into the stitch, yarn over, pull through, pull the yarn up high. That's once. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, high. That's twice. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through, pull it up high. 3 times. Yarn over, and we're going to pull through all. Let's see, we've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pull through 6. Like that. Yarn over, pull through 2. That's the puff stitch. Then the pattern said chain 2, skip 2, and then 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now again we will chain 2, skip 2, puff stitch in the third, chain 2, skip 2, 7 double crochets, and we continue on like that until we have done 7 double crochets and we have reached the center spine of the scarf. We will be left with 2 double crochets before the chain 1 center space. So let's go ahead and do that, and I will meet you here at the center. Okay, so we have reached the end. We have 2, I've just did these 7 here, the set of 7. I have 2 double crochets left before the center chain 1 space. That is what it looks like. So now at the center, let's see. We need to chain 2, and then we need to put a puff stitch in the center chain 1 space, chain 1, another puff stitch in the same space, chain 1, another puff stitch in the same space. Then we need to chain 2, and we need to skip 2 double crochets, and then we start again with the pattern of 7 double crochets, chain 2, puff stitch, chain 2, 7 double crochets, just like we did here on this side. Okay, so we need to chain 2 now, like that, and then we are going to put a puff stitch in the center chain 1 space right here. So let's do that. Yarn over, insert the hook, yarn over, pull through, and pull it up high 3 times. That's 2 and 3. Yarn over, pull through all 6, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's our first puff stitch. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to put the second puff stitch in here. 1, 2, 3, through all and through 2, chain 1, and then the third puff stitch in the same space. Like that. So that's the center. Now we need to chain 2, 1, 2. We need to skip 2 double crochets and then make our 7 double crochets. So here's the first one we will skip, and the second, and we go in here into the third, 1 double crochet, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, chain 2, skip 2, puff stitch, chain 2, skip 2, 7 double. So we continue on like that until we reach the end of the row, and I will meet you there. I've finished the last set of 7 double crochets, and I'm left here with my chain 4 of the previous row. So the pattern then says to chain 2 and to put a treble on top of the chain 4. Chain 2, treble on top of the chain 4, like that. That's the end of the row. Okay, row number 2 of the border. In green, chain 2, and we do a 2 puff stitch. So we're going to pull up our yarn. Instead of 3 times here, we're going to do it twice only. Then we chain 2, we do our normal 3 puff stitch, and then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to skip the chain 2 space of the previous row and 1 double crochet. We're going in between the double crochets, not into the stitches, but in between them. We're going in between each, and we will end up with 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. Then we chain 2, and then we're going on top of the puff stitch of the previous row. We're going to make a puff stitch, chain 2, a puff stitch, chain 2, again 6 double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. So we start off with a chain 2 and a 2 puff stitch. So chain 2, turn the work, into the very first stitch. We'll do our puff stitch. We'll pull the yarn up twice. Once, twice. We go through all, 1, 2, 3, 4 loops. Yarn over through 2. Not sure if you could see that properly, so let me do it again for you. So we've chained 2, we've turned our work. Now yarn over, insert the hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull through and pull the yarn up high. That's once. Yarn over, insert the hook, yarn over, pull the yarn through and pull it up high. That's twice. We're going to pull it through 1, 2, 3, 4 loops now. Yarn over, pull through 4, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, now we need to chain 2, and we need to make a normal puff stitch here in the same space, in the same stitch. 1, 2, 3, pull through 6, pull through 2, chain 2, And now we're going to go in between the double crochets of the previous row. So don't go into the stitch, go in between. There. Double crochet in between the next two, in between the next two. And we continue on until we've reached the last two. Put one in between there, and that's done. We should have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then chain 2, 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 on top of the puff stitch of the previous row. So to go into the puff stitch, we need to go in here, 2 loops on the hook, this here, 1, 2, 3, chain 2 into the same stitch, 1, 2, 3, that's done. Chain 2, in between, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, chain 2, one, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, now we chain 2, 6 here, 2 puff stitches on top, so we continue on like this until we've reached the center of the scarf. Okay, so we've reached the center here. We've just done our 6 double crochets in between the 7 of the previous row. This is what it looks like. Now let's see what we need to do. We will need to chain 2, put our puff stitch, chain 2 puff stitch on top of the first puff stitch, chain 2, again a puff stitch, chain 2 puff stitch on top of the next puff stitch, chain 2, and then again puff stitch, chain 2 puff stitch on top of the last puff stitch, and then we chain 2 and we continue on the pattern as we did on the first side. Okay, so chain 2, two puff stitches here separated by a chain 2 space, 1, 2, 3, that's the first, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, that's the first puff stitch done. Now we chain 2 and we move on to the second one, as the first, chain 2 into the same stitch, 1, 2, 3, that's the second. Now we chain 2 and we put 2 here in the last puff stitch, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3. That's the center done. Then we chain 2, and here we continue on with our pattern. So 6 double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. Four, 5, 6, chain 2, puff stitch on top of the puff stitch, chain 2, and another puff stitch on top of the same puff stitch. There. Now we'll chain 2 and we'll continue the pattern until we reach the end, and that's where we'll meet. So I've just put the last set of 6 double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. Now we are going to chain 2, put our 2 puff stitches, and they're separated by the chain 2 space, on top of the chain 4. Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to chain 2, puff stitch on top of the chain 4. 1, 2, 3. Here's the chain 4. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. 1, 2, 3. And that completes this row. Okay, we can move on to row 3 now. Row 3, here in black, starts off with a chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yes. And then we're going to put our 2 puff stitches separated by the chain 2 space in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. So into the chain 2 space in between the puff stitches. Then we're going to chain 3, and we're going to go again in between the double crochets of the previous row. We had 5, so we'll get 4 here. Sorry, we had 6, so we'll get 5 here. Yeah, that's right. So 5 there, and then 3 chains are 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space into the previous chain 2 space, and then 3 chains again are 5 double crochets in between, and then we continue on like that until we reach the center of the scarf. Okay, so we start off with a chain 7. Let's do that. Chain 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Turn the work. We're going to put 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the first 2. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, in between the double crochets of the previous row. 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain 3, 2 puff stitches in between these 2. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, chain 3, and then again double crochets in between the double crochets of this row, 2 puff stitches in between. We continue on like that until we reach the center of the scarf. So just did the last 5 double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row, and I've reached the center of the scarf. So now we are going to here chain 3, put our 2 puff stitches in there as usual, chain 3, 2 puff stitches in the next set of 2, chain 3, 2 puff stitches in the third set of 2, chain 3, and we continue our pattern on like that. So we're chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, 2 puff stitches in here, chain 2, another one, you need to chain 3 in between. Into this space here. Two puff stitches, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, into this space here. chain 2, chain 3, and are going to do our double crochets in between, 2 puff stitches on top of in between these 2 puff stitches, and so on and so forth with chain 3s in between. So I will meet you at the end of the row. Okay, so I've reached the end of the row, just did the last 5 double crochets of the row in here. Now we will need to, let's see, chain 3, put 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the last 2 puff stitches of the previous row, and then we chain 3 and we put a treble crochet on top of the last puff stitch of the previous row. Okay, we chain 3, 1, 2, 3. In between these 2 we're going to make 2 puff stitches, 1, 2, 3, separated by a chain 2 space, 1, 2, 3, then we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to put a treble on top of the last puff stitch. And that completes the row. This is what it looks like. So now we are ready for row 4. Row 4 here in green. We start off with a chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We put our 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. We chain 4. We put our double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. We will get to 4 this time. Chain 4. 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. Chain 4. Double crochets in between. Okay, chain 7 is our starting chain. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Turn the work around. We're going to put 2 puff stitches in between these 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, like that. Then we're chaining 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. 2, 3, 4. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 puff stitches in between these two. Chain 2, the second puff stitch. Chain 4, 2, 3, 4. Double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row, and we will end up with 4, and that's how we will repeat the pattern until we reach the center. Here we are. I've just put the last 4 double crochets before the center of the scarf. So now what we need to do is chain 4, put our 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the puff stitches of the previous row. Then we are going to chain 3, put our 2 puff stitches separated by the chain 2 space in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. Then we need to chain 3, 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the puff stitches of the previous row, and then we chain 4 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we continue the pattern with our chain 4s in between. Okay, so for the in between the sets of puff stitches in the center, we will need to chain 3. So chain 4 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 puff stitches here. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. 1, 2, 3. That's done. Now we need to go here. In between, we need to chain 3. And then here are 2 puff stitches. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. 1, 2, 3. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we go here. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2. 1, 2, 3. That's the center done. Chain 4 now. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here we are going to do the other side of the scarf in the same way. So I've just put in the 4 double crochets, the last 4 of this row. Well, let's see what we need to do. We are on row 1, 2, 3, 4, or on row 4. That's the green row there. Okay, okay, good. Right, so we're here. Now we need to chain 4, put our 2 puff stitches separated by the chain 2 space in between the puff stitches of the previous row, and then we need to chain 4, put a treble on top of the chain 4 of the previous row. Okay, so let's chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 puff stitches in between these two. Separated by a chain 2 space. Chain 4. Treble on top of the chain 4. 1, 2, 3, this is 4 here. And that finishes the row. Okay. This is what it looks like. Here's the center. Row 5. Let's have a look. Starts with a chain 3 and a double crochet into the first stitch. Then chain 3. And now we're putting 3 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. Then we chain 3, and then we go again with double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. We will get 3 this time. Chain 3, and then again 3 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. Chain 3, double crochets in between the double crochets. So we start off with chain 3, double crochet into the same stitch, or the first stitch. Let's do that. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Turn the work around. Double crochet into the very first stitch. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to put 3 puff stitches separated by chain 2 spaces in between these two. That's the first, chain 2. That's the second, chain 2. And that's the third. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. We will get 3. Chain 3, three puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in here. One, chain 2, two, chain 2, 3, chain 3, double crochets in between, and we continue on like that until we reach the center. Okay, so I just put in the last 3 double crochets and I have reached the center of the scarf for row 5. Let's see. Okay, we're going to chain 3. We're going to put our 3 puff stitches separated by chain 2 spaces in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row, and we're chaining 3. We're doing that again for the center here, chain 3, and then once again here, chain 3, our double crochets, chain 3, 3 puff stitches. So let's do the center. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 puff stitches in here. That's 1, chain 2, that's 2, chain 2, that's 3, chain 3, now we're going in here in between these 2, that's 1, chain 2, two, chain 2, and that's 3, chain 3, now we are going into the last 2 of the center here with 3 puff stitches. That's 1, chain 2, that's 2, chain 2, that's 3. So that's the center done. Then we chain 3 and we do our 3 double crochets here in between the double crochets of the previous row, 3 puff stitches, so chain 3, 3 puff stitches separated by chain 2 space, chain 3, 3 double crochets, chain 3, and so on and so forth until we reach the end of the row. So I just put in the last 3 double crochets of this row, row number 5. So we are here. Now we're going to do a chain 3, and we're going to put our 3 puff stitches separated by chain 2 spaces in between the 2 puff stitches of the previous row. Then we are going to chain 3, and we're going to put 2 double crochets on top of the chain 3 of the previous row. Okay, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 puff stitches in between these two, chain 2, one more, chain 2, that's 3 puff stitches, and then we're going to chain 3, and we're going to put 2 double crochets on top of the chain 3 of the previous row. So 1, 2, 3 right there, 2 double crochets, like that. That's the end of row 5. This is what it looks like. Here's the center. Okay, row 6. We are going to start row 6 with a chain 3 and a double crochet in between the 2 double crochets of the previous row. Then we're going to chain 3 and we're going to do 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in the first chain 2 space of the 3 puff stitches of the previous row. Then we're going to chain 3 and we're going to do again 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space into the next chain 2 space of the set of 3 puff stitches of the previous row. Then we'll chain 3 and we put 2 double crochets in between the 3 of the previous row, chain 3, and we repeat again. 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in the first chain 2 space of the set of 3 puff stitches of the previous row. We chain 3 and then again 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in the second chain 2 space of the set of 3 puff stitches of the previous row. So we start off with a chain 3 and a double crochet in between the 2 double crochets of the previous row. Let's do that. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, turn the work around. We're going to put a double crochet in between these 2. Then we chain 3 in between the first 2, so the first chain 2 space here. We are going to put 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space. So that's the first puff stitch, chain 2 into the same space, another puff stitch like that. Then we chain 3, and we're going to do that again into this space. 1 puff stitch, chain 2, second puff stitch, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, double crochets in between the double crochets of the previous row. We'll end up with 2. Chain 3, and then here the same again. 2 puff stitches into the first space, chain 2 in between, then we chain 3, and then we do that again into the next chain 2 space. Chain 2 in between, like that. So we continue on. We will chain 3, put our 2 double crochets in between here. We will do 2 puff stitches in here, chain 3, 2 puff stitches in here, chain 3, and so on and so forth until we reach the center. So here we are. Just put in the last 2 double crochets before the center of the scarf. Here we are. We're going to chain 3. We're going to put our 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space in the first chain 2 space, chain 3, 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space into the next chain 2 space. Then we chain 2. Then we do it all over again. We chain 2 and again. And then we do the rest of the scarf. So let's do the center together. Going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Put our 2 puff stitches in here. Chain 2. 2 puff, second puff stitch. Chain 3. 2 puff stitches in here. That's the first. Chain 2. 1 more. That's the second. And then in between we need to chain 2. So here we'll do that again. Three, chain 2, then in between we chain 3, chain 2, then we chain 2, we do it all again. Here, 2 puff stitches in here, chain 2, here's the second, chain 3, that's the first, chain 2 in between, and then for the last puff stitch, that's done. And then we continue on. We're going to do chain 3, put our 2 double crochets in between, chain 3, 2 puff stitches separated by chain 2 space, chain 3, 2 puff stitches separated by chain 2 space, chain 3, 2 double crochets, chain 3, and so on and so forth until we reach the end. So here I've just put in the last 2 double crochets of the row. So now we need to chain 3, we need to do what we have been doing, 2 puff stitches separated by chain 2 space in the first chain 2 space, chain 3, 2 puff stitches separated by chain 2 space into the next chain 2 space of the set of 3 of the previous row. Then we're going to chain 3, then we're going to put a double crochet in between the double crochet and the chain 3 space of the previous row, and then we're putting a double crochet on top of the chain 3 space. So let's do that. We are chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and then two puff stitches in here separated by a chain 2 space, chain 3, 2 puff stitches here, chain 2, okay, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, double crochet in between the double crochet and the chain 3 space, right in there, double crochet, and then another double crochet on top of the chain 3 space. That completes this row, which is the 6th row. Now for the last row, the 7th row, we are going to, let's see, chain 3, and then we're going straight into the first chain 2 space here with a 2 puff stitch, chain 2 in between, and then we go into the chain 3 space, sorry, with chain 2, and we go into the chain 3 space, and we do a 3 puff stitch with chain 2s in between, chain 2, and then that again, Then we're going straight into in between the two double crochets of the previous row with a double crochet, and then we're going straight into the puff stitches again. So chain 3 is how we start. 1, 2, 3, turn the work around. We're going straight into the first chain 2 space in between the first 2 puff stitches. We're going to do 2 puff stitches separated by a chain 2 space. That's the first puff stitch, chain 2. And the second one. Then we will chain 2. We're going into the chain 3 space. Here we're going to do 3 puff stitches separated by chain 2 spaces. That's the first, chain 2. That's the second, chain 2. And the third. Then we chain 2 again. And here in this chain 2 space, we're going to put 2 puff stitches. Chain 2. And that's completed. Now we are going straight here. We're not chaining anything. We're going straight in between these 2 double crochets. We're going to put a double crochet in there. And then we're going to do the same again as what we did here, over here. Don't chain anything, just straight into it. Puff stitch. Chain 2. Puff stitch. Chain 2. In the chain 3 space, we need 3 puff stitches. That's 1, chain 2. That's 2, chain 2. That's 3, chain 2. 2 puff stitches in the last chain 2 space. Chain 2. 1 more. And then we are going to put a double crochet in between these 2 double, and that is how we will continue until we reach the center. So I've reached the last double crochet before the center of the scarf. So now we are going to do the center, which is here. We're going straight into it with 2 puff stitches. Then in the chain 3 space we need 3, then 2 again. We don't chain anything. We go straight into the next one, which is the same as this one. and then again the same for the third one. So straight into it. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, chain 2. Here, chain 3 space, we need 3 puff stitches. Chain 2, chain 2, and then chain 2, 2 puff stitches, chain 2, this is the second puff stitch. That's the first set done. Now we're going to the center set, and we're just going straight into it. We don't chain anything. 2 puff stitches in here, and then 3 in here, 2 in here. Don't chain anything in here. Do the same with this one. Don't chain anything, go straight into here, in between these 2, with a double, straight into here. And that is how we finish the scarf, until we reach the end, where we are going to put a double crochet in between the double crochet and the chain 3 of this previous row, and then we fasten off. And that is how we make the border. As stated in the video for the scarf itself, this border has been made with alizeangoragold yarn and a 3.5mm hook. This pattern is available in the community tab of my channel. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye!